The smoke was so thick that Simone couldn't see her own hands as she crawled across the bedroom floor. Her lungs burned with each breath, and the heat from the flames licking up the walls felt like it was cooking her alive. She had woken up to the smell of smoke and the crackling sound of fire eating through her home. But when she tried to open the bedroom door, it wouldn't budge. "Blake!" she screamed, pounding on the door with both fists. "Blake, help me. The door is stuck." Her throat was raw from the smoke. She could barely get the words out. Simone twisted the doorknob again and again, throwing her whole body against the door, but something was blocking it from the other side. The fire was spreading fast, racing across the curtains and up the walls. The heat was unbearable. Then she heard him. Blake's voice came from the other side of the door, calm and quiet. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew it was him. Relief flooded through her body. "Blake. Oh, thank God. Help me get the door open." Simone coughed violently, her body shaking. "I can't breathe." There was silence. Then she heard footsteps. Not running toward her. Walking away. "Blake." Her voice cracked. "Blake." The footsteps continued down the hallway, growing fainter. Simone's heart stopped. He was leaving. He was actually leaving her to die. No, no, no. She threw herself at the door again, ignoring the pain shooting through her shoulder. Black smoke filled the room completely now. She couldn't see anything. Her body felt heavy, like someone had filled her arms and legs with sand. She sank to the floor, pressing her face against the small gap at the bottom of the door, trying to find any pocket of clean air. This couldn't be how her story ended. Not like this. Not at 32 years old with so much life still ahead of her. But her body wouldn't cooperate anymore. The smoke had filled her lungs and the world was going dark around the edges. In the distance she heard sirens. Sirens meant help was coming. Sirens meant maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. Simone held on to that sound like a lifeline as consciousness slipped away from her. She woke up to bright lights and the steady beeping of hospital machines. Her throat felt like someone had scraped it raw with sandpaper, and when she tried to move her arms, pain shot through them like lightning. Simone looked down and saw thick bandages wrapped around both forearms. The skin that showed was red and blistered. "Mrs. Bennett, try not to move too much." A nurse appeared beside her bed, adjusting the four in her arm. "You're very lucky to be alive. The firefighters got to you just in time." Lucky. That was an interesting word choice. Simone closed her eyes and the memory came flooding back. The locked door. Blake's voice. His footsteps walking away. Over the next few days, as Simone drifted in and out of consciousness in the ICU, she heard things. Nurses talked while they thought she was sleeping. Doctors discussed her case in low voices in the hallway. And what she heard made her blood run cold. The husband said he wasn't home when the fire started. One nurse whispered to another while changing Simone's bandages. But Mrs. Chin from next door swears she saw his car in the driveway. Said she watched him drive away right as the flames were visible in the upstairs window. "That's strange," the other nurse replied. "Why would he lie about that?" "No idea. But the fire department said something was blocking the bedroom door from the outside. They had to break it down to get to her." Simone kept her eyes closed and her breathing steady, but her mind was racing. Blake had been there. He had been home. And he had locked her in that room to die. The question was, why? Blake visited her in the hospital on her 4th day there. He came in carrying flowers, his eyes red like he'd been crying. When he saw her lying in the hospital bed, bandaged and broken, he rushed to her side. "Simone, baby, I'm so sorry." His voice shook. "I should have been there. I should have been home to save you." Simone looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone she didn't recognize. This man had promised to love and protect her. They had been married for 5 years. She had trusted him with her life. And he had tried to take it. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was at a late meeting with investors downtown," Blake said quickly, reaching for her hand. She pulled it away. "I got the call from the fire department and I drove home as fast as I could. When I saw our house, saw the flames. Simone, I thought I'd lost you." He was a good liar. If she hadn't heard those nurses, if she hadn't remembered his voice outside that door, she might have believed him. But now she saw the truth behind his tears. This was an act. "The door was locked," Simone said quietly. "From the outside." Blake's face flickered with something, fear maybe or surprise, before he composed himself. The fire investigator said it might have been warped by the heat. Old houses do that sometimes. The wood expands and jams the door shut. "Is that what they said?" "Yeah." Blake squeezed her hand and she let him this time. "I'm just grateful you're alive. That's all that matters now." We'll rebuild. We'll get through this together. Simone nodded slowly, watching his face. Blake smiled at her, relieved. He thought she believed him. He thought he had gotten away with it. But Simone had learned something important that night in the fire. She was stronger than she ever knew. And she was done being the trusting, naive wife who believed everything her husband told her. If Blake wanted her dead, he had made a critical mistake. He had left her alive. And now she was going to find out exactly why he had tried to kill her. Then she was going to make sure he paid for it. The game had just begun, and Blake didn't even know he was playing. 3 weeks after the fire, Simone was released from the hospital. The burns on her arms were healing, but they would leave scars. The doctors said she was lucky the damage wasn't worse. Lucky. There was that word again. Simone didn't feel lucky. She felt angry. Blake had transformed their guest bedroom into a recovery space for her. He brought her meals, helped her change her bandages, and fussed over her like a devoted husband. To anyone watching from the outside, he was the picture of a caring spouse nursing his wife back to health. But Simone saw through it now. Every kind gesture felt like another layer of lies. She played along, smiling weakly and thanking him for his help, while inside her mind worked constantly, trying to piece together what had happened and why. The fire investigator had ruled the incident as accidental, caused by faulty wiring in the bedroom. Case closed. But Simone knew better. She had lived in that house for 5 years, and there had never been any electrical problems. Plus, there was the matter of the locked door that everyone seemed eager to explain away. On her second day home, while Blake was at work, Simone forced herself out of bed. Her body ached, but she had to see the damage for herself. She walked slowly up the stairs to their bedroom. The door had been replaced, but the room itself was a disaster. The walls were black with soot, the furniture charred and ruined. The smell of smoke still hung heavy in the air. Simone moved carefully through the debris, looking for something, anything that would prove what she knew to be true. Near the doorway, half buried under fallen plaster, she found it. The remains of the door lock mechanism. The metal was twisted and melted, but she could still see where something had been jammed into it from the outside. A screwdriver maybe, or a metal rod. Something to keep the door from opening. She took out her phone and snapped photos from every angle. Then she noticed something else. The fire hadn't started in one place. There were multiple burn patterns on the walls in corners far apart from each other. Simone wasn't a fire expert, but even she could tell this wasn't normal. Fires usually started in one spot and spread. This fire had started in several places at once. Someone had set this fire deliberately. And that someone was Blake. But why? That was the question that haunted her. They had a good marriage, or so she thought. Sure, Blake had been distant lately, working longer hours and spending more time on his phone. But lots of married couples went through rough patches. It didn't usually lead to attempted murder. Simone spent the afternoon searching through Blake's office in their home. She felt like a spy in her own house, listening for the sound of his car in the driveway while she rifled through his papers and opened his desk drawers. Most of it was boring business stuff, contracts, property listings, invoices. But then she found his personal laptop tucked in the bottom drawer. Her hands shook as she opened it. Blake wasn't careful about security. His password was their wedding anniversary. How romantic. Simone logged in and started searching through his files. At first, she didn't find anything unusual. Work emails, spreadsheets, photos of properties. Then she checked the trash folder on his email, the place where people thought deleted things disappeared forever. People were always so careless about the trash. The email subject line made her stomach drop. "We need to talk about the plan." Simone clicked it open. The email was from someone named Amber Morrison, sent 3 months ago. The message was short but devastating. "Blake, I know you said it would take time, but I'm tired of waiting. When are you going to leave her? You promised me we'd be together. I can't keep sneaking around like this. Either you end things with Simone or I'm done with this whole thing. And don't think you can just string me along. I know about the insurance policy. If something happens to her, I want my share." Simone read the email 3 times, each word burning into her brain. Blake was having an affair with someone named Amber Morrison, and they had talked about her life insurance policy. She clicked through more deleted emails, finding an entire conversation thread between Blake and this woman. The messages went back over a year. They had met at some real estate conference. The affair had started innocently enough. Drinks after meetings, late-night conversations. But then it had turned into something more. Amber wanted Blake to leave Simone. Blake had been stalling, saying the timing wasn't right, that he needed to figure out the finances first. Then, 2 months ago, the tone of the emails changed. Amber had discovered that Simone had a substantial life insurance policy. $1 million with Blake as the sole beneficiary. She had also learned that Simone's parents had left her a sizable inheritance that was held in trust, which would go entirely to Blake if Simone died. The emails after that were careful, never explicitly saying what they were planning, but the implication was clear. If Simone died, Blake would be rich and free to be with Amber. All their problems would be solved. Simone's phone rang, making her jump. It was Blake. "Hey honey, just wanted to check on you," he said, his voice warm with false concern. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Simone said, keeping her voice weak. "I was just resting." "Good. I'll be home in a couple hours with dinner. Love you." "Love you too," Simone lied. She hung up and immediately forwarded all the deleted emails to her own private email address, one that Blake didn't know about. Then she cleared the laptop's history so he wouldn't know she had been snooping. Simone sat back in Blake's office chair, her mind reeling. Her husband had tried to kill her for money, for an insurance payout and an inheritance. And he had a mistress waiting in the wings to help him spend it. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. But underneath the pain, something else was growing. Something cold and sharp and focused. Blake had made a mistake. He had underestimated her. He thought she was weak, naive, easy to fool. He thought the fire had broken her. He was wrong. Simone picked up her phone and called her best friend Nadia, a lawyer who had been checking on her constantly since the fire. "Nadia," Simone said when she answered, "I need your help with something. And it has to stay completely between us." "Of course," Nadia replied immediately, hearing the seriousness in Simone's tone. "What's going on?" "Blake tried to kill me. And I'm going to prove it." Nadia came over the next morning while Blake was at work. Simone had never been so grateful for her friend's sharp mind and legal expertise. They sat in the living room with all the evidence spread out on the coffee table. Photos of the door lock, printouts of the emails, and Simone's notes about the timeline of events. "This is serious," Nadia said, examining everything carefully. "But we need to be smart about how we handle it. If we go to the police now with just this, Blake could talk his way out of it. Rich men with good lawyers have a way of making problems disappear." "So what do we do?" Simone asked. "We build an airtight case," Nadia said. "We gather more evidence. We document everything. And we make sure that when we finally take him down, he can't wiggle out of it." They came up with a plan. Simone would pretend to have memory problems from the smoke inhalation and trauma. She would act confused about the details of the fire, asking Blake innocent questions that would make him think she didn't remember anything suspicious. Meanwhile, she would secretly investigate, gathering evidence and building a case that would be impossible to deny. "But you have to be careful," Nadia warned. "If Blake realizes you're onto him, he might try again. And next time you might not be so lucky." Simone knew the risk. But she also knew she couldn't just walk away. Blake had tried to murder her. If she didn't stop him, he would keep the insurance money, get away with his crime, and probably do the same thing to the next woman who trusted him. Over the next week, Simone played her role perfectly. She asked Blake confused questions about the night of the fire. "Was I alone in the house?" she would ask. "I can't remember. Were you home?" Blake would patiently explain that he had been at a meeting, that she had been alone, that it was an accident caused by bad wiring. Each lie made her hate him more. While Blake thought she was recovering and confused, Simone was actually conducting a thorough investigation. She reached out to a friend from college who had become a fire investigator. Without revealing too much, she sent him the photos she had taken of the bedroom. His response confirmed her suspicions. "Simone, I don't want to alarm you, but this doesn't look like an accidental fire. See these burn patterns? Multiple points of origin. And that door lock looks deliberately jammed. Has anyone from the fire department contacted you about this?" Simone told him the official investigation had ruled it accidental. Her friend was shocked. He offered to do an independent review if she wanted, off the record. Simone accepted. Meanwhile, she started digging into their finances. Blake had always handled their money, saying it was too complicated for her to worry about. She had trusted him, never questioning where their money went or how much they had. That had been stupid. She could see that now. What she found made her sick. Blake had been systematically draining their joint accounts for months, transferring money to accounts she didn't have access to. He had taken out loans using her name and their house as collateral. He had even borrowed against her inheritance trust, something she didn't even know was possible. They weren't just in debt. They were drowning in it. Blake had been living far beyond his means, spending money on expensive gifts and hotel rooms. Gifts and hotel rooms for Amber Morrison, no doubt. The life insurance money wasn't just about starting a new life with his mistress. Blake needed it to cover his debts. Without that payout, he would lose everything. Simone felt like she was living in a nightmare. Every smile Blake gave her was poisoned. Every "I love you" was a lie. She wanted to scream at him to expose his betrayal, but she forced herself to stay calm. Revenge would be sweet, but only if she did it right. She also started watching Blake's movements carefully. He didn't know she could see his location through the family tracking app on their phones. She had set it up years ago for safety reasons, and Blake had forgotten it existed. Now she used it to track where he went during his supposed business meetings. 3 times in 1 week, Blake's location showed him at the Grand Hotel downtown. Always in the afternoon. Always for 2 to 3 hours. Simone knew what that meant. She drove to the hotel one day, parking across the street where she could watch the entrance. Sure enough, at 2 o'clock, Blake's car pulled into the parking garage. 15 minutes later, a woman walked into the hotel lobby. She was young, maybe late 20s, with long blonde hair and expensive clothes. She looked confident, like she belonged there. Simone took photos of her. That must be Amber Morrison. The woman who was sleeping with her husband. The woman who knew about the plan to kill her. Watching them meet, knowing what they had done, made Simone's hands shake with rage. But she didn't confront them. Not yet. She took her photos, documented the date and time, and drove home before Blake did. That night, Blake came home with flowers and takeout from Simone's favorite restaurant. He kissed her cheek and asked about her day. She told him she had spent it resting, watching TV, trying to regain her strength. "You're doing so well with your recovery," Blake said, smiling at her. "I'm proud of you." Simone smiled back, playing the grateful wife. Inside, she was counting down the days until she could destroy him. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nadia. "Found something big. Can you talk tomorrow?" Simone's heart raced. Whatever Nadia had discovered, it was going to be another piece of the puzzle. Another nail in Blake's coffin. She looked at her husband across the dinner table, laughing at something on his phone, completely unaware that his whole world was about to come crashing down. Blake had tried to kill her, but he had failed. Now Simone was going to make him regret that failure for the rest of his life. Nadia arrived at 9 the next morning with her laptop and a determined expression. She sat up in the kitchen while Blake was at his morning workout, a routine that gave them exactly 90 minutes to talk freely. "I did some digging on Amber Morrison," Nadia said, pulling up files on her computer. "She works for Blake's company. She's an acquisitions coordinator. She's been there for about 18 months. So he gave his mistress a job," Simone said bitterly. "How convenient. It gets worse. I looked into their financial records, don't ask me how, and Blake has been paying her way more than someone in her position should make. He's also been renting her a condo downtown. The lease is in his name, paid from one of those accounts he opened without telling you." Simone felt like she might be sick. Blake hadn't just been having an affair. He had been supporting this woman with money that belonged to both of them. Money from their joint accounts. Money that was half hers. "There's more," Nadia continued. "I found social media posts from Amber. She's been careful to keep Blake out of her photos, but she posts a lot about her lifestyle. Expensive dinners, designer bags, jewelry. Look at this post from 2 months ago." Nadia turned the laptop to show Simone a photo of Amber at a restaurant, smiling at the camera. Around her neck was a diamond necklace that Simone recognized immediately. It had been her grandmother's. Simone had kept it in her jewelry box, only wearing it on special occasions. "That's mine," Simone whispered. "He gave her my grandmother's necklace. The violation of it made her want to break something. That necklace was one of the few things she had left of her grandmother. And Blake had stolen it to give to his mistress." "I'm sorry," Nadia said quietly. "But this is good evidence. It shows the affair, the financial misconduct, everything." Simone took a deep breath, forcing down her anger. Emotion wouldn't help her now. Cold calculation would. "I want to see her," Simone said suddenly. "I want to see this woman face to face." "Simone, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not going to confront her. I just need to see her. To understand who she is." Nadia looked hesitant but finally agreed. They looked up Amber's social media posts and found that she frequented a coffee shop downtown every morning before work. The next day, Simone drove there and waited. She had changed her appearance since the fire. Her long hair was now cut short in a pixie style. She wore large sunglasses even inside the coffee shop. The burns on her arms were covered by long sleeves. She looked different enough that she hoped Amber wouldn't recognize her. At 8:30, Amber Morrison walked into the coffee shop. In person she was even prettier than her photos suggested. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Simone's car payment. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like someone who had never struggled for anything in her life. Simone watched from a corner table as Amber ordered her coffee, chatting with the barista like they were old friends. She seemed happy, carefree. She had no idea her whole world was about to collapse. Amber picked up her coffee and turned to leave. That's when their eyes met. Simone saw the moment of recognition, the way Amber's smile faltered. Her face went pale. "Simone," Amber said uncertainly. Simone said nothing, just stared at her. Let her be uncomfortable. Let her wonder what Simone knew. I heard about the fire. I'm so sorry. That must have been terrifying." Amber's voice wavered. She clutched her coffee cup tighter. "Blake said you were recovering well." "Blake talks to you about me?" Simone asked, her voice calm. We worked together. It came up at the office." Amber was backing toward the door. "I really should go. I'm going to be late for work." "Amber," Simone said, making the woman freeze. "That's a beautiful necklace you're wearing. Where did you get it?" Amber's hand flew to her throat, where a different necklace hung today. But Simone saw the guilt in her eyes. She knew. "I have to go," Amber said quickly, practically running out of the coffee shop. Simone sat back in her chair, satisfied. That had been enlightening. Amber was scared. She knew what they had done, and seeing Simone alive and aware had shaken her. Good. Let her be scared. Simone followed Amber at a distance, watching as she practically ran to her car. Then Simone followed the car, staying far enough back that Amber wouldn't notice. Amber didn't go to Blake's office. Instead, she drove to the Grand Hotel. Simone parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Blake's car pulled into the parking garage. So Amber had called him, panicked about their encounter. They were meeting to discuss what to do. Simone took photos of both their cars in the parking garage. She checked the time and dated the photos. Then she did something bold. She walked into the hotel. The lobby was busy with business travelers checking in and out. Simone kept her head down and moved toward the elevators like she belonged there. She had seen enough movies to know that hotels like this had security cameras everywhere. She was counting on it. She stood in the lobby for 10 minutes, pretending to be on her phone. Then she saw them coming out of the elevator together. Blake had his hand on Amber's lower back, guiding her. They weren't being careful anymore. They thought they were safe. Simone snapped photos of them together. Blake leaning in to whisper something in Amber's ear. Amber laughing. Blake kissing her temple. Every photo was another nail in their coffin. As they walked past her toward the exit, Blake stopped suddenly. Simone's heart pounded, thinking he had seen her. But he was just checking his phone. "I need to get back," he said to Amber. "Simone's been asking weird questions lately. I think the smoke damaged her memory, but I want to be careful. Maybe the fire didn't work because it was supposed to look like an accident," Amber said quietly. "Maybe we need to think of something else." Simone's blood turned to ice. They were still planning to kill her. "Not here," Blake said sharply, looking around. He didn't see Simone standing 20 feet away, her phone recording every word. "We'll talk later." They left the hotel separately. Simone stood there, shaking, listening to the recording she had captured. It wasn't a full confession, but it was close. Combined with everything else she had gathered, it was damning. She drove home and immediately sent everything to Nadia. The photos, the recording, all of it. Nadia called her 2 minutes later. "Simone, this is enough. We need to go to the police now." "Not yet," Simone said. "I want to know everything. I want to understand the complete picture before we move. These people are talking about killing you again. This isn't a game." "I know. But we only get one shot at this. We need to make sure it sticks." Nadia reluctantly agreed to wait a little longer. That night, while Blake was asleep, Simone broke into his office in their house and searched more thoroughly. In a locked drawer, she found the key hidden in his desk. She discovered documents related to their house. Blake had been planning to sell it immediately after her death. He had already met with a real estate agent. Had already gotten the property appraised. Had already planned how he would divide up her belongings and clear out the house. Simone looked at the documents with tears in her eyes. This was the man she had married. The man she had trusted with her heart and her life. And he had been planning her death like it was just another business transaction. She took photos of everything and put it all back exactly as she had found it. Then she went back to bed, lying next to the man who wanted her dead, and started planning her next move. Blake had taught her a valuable lesson. Trust was for fools. Love was a weapon. And survival meant being smarter and more ruthless than your enemies. Simone could do that. In fact, she was counting on it. 3 days after the hotel encounter, Simone sat in an unmarked office downtown, across from Detective Harrison Cole. Nadia had arranged the meeting, calling in a favor from a law school friend who knew the detective personally. Harrison was in his mid-40s, with gray streaks in his hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Your friend tells me you have some concerns about your house fire." Simone placed a thick folder on his desk. Inside was everything she had gathered over the past weeks. The emails between Blake and Amber, the financial records showing the drained accounts, photos of the door lock, the fire investigator's unofficial analysis, pictures of Blake and Amber together, and the recording from the hotel. Detective Cole went through it methodically, his expression growing more serious with each page. When he finished, he sat back in his chair and studied Simone carefully. "This is a lot of evidence," he said. "Why didn't you come to the police sooner?" "Because I needed to be sure," Simone replied. "And I needed to have enough proof that he couldn't talk his way out of it. You should have come to us immediately. What your husband did, what he tried to do, is attempted murder. Every day you stayed in that house with him, you were in danger." "I know. But I also know how these things work. Rich men with good lawyers make problems disappear. I needed to build a case that was impossible to ignore." Harrison nodded slowly. "You're right about that. But you're also lucky you're still alive to tell this story." He tapped the folder. "Do you mind if I keep this? I want to review everything more carefully." "That's a copy. Keep it." Harrison studied her for a long moment. "There's something else you should know, Mrs. Bennett. Your husband has a history." Simone's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Blake Bennett was married before he met you. His first wife, Patricia, died 7 years ago in a car accident. Her car went off a bridge late at night. Blake was the sole beneficiary of her life insurance policy. He used that money to start his real estate business." The room seemed to tilt. "You think he killed her too?" "I think it's suspicious. At the time, there wasn't enough evidence to investigate further. Blake had an alibi, he was supposedly at home when the accident happened. But Patricia's family always believed something was wrong. Her car was new, well-maintained. The weather was clear that night. And she was an experienced driver who knew that road well." Simone felt sick. "So he's done this before?" "Possibly. But we couldn't prove it then and the case went cold. However, with what you've brought me today, we might be able to reopen that investigation." Harrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to be honest with you. What you've collected is good, but it's not enough for an arrest yet. We need something concrete. A direct confession. Proof of planning. Something that puts the attempted murder directly on Blake with no room for doubt." "What do you suggest?" "We need to make him slip up. Make him think he's in danger of being caught so he does something stupid. Criminals get sloppy when they panic." They spent the next hour planning. Harrison would quietly investigate Blake's financial records and the original fire report. Meanwhile, Simone would continue gathering evidence and, with Harrison's guidance, would create situations where Blake might reveal more of his plans. "Be careful," Harrison warned as she left. "If Blake even suspects you know the truth, he becomes a cornered animal. And those are the most dangerous kind." Simone went home and found Blake in the living room working on his laptop. He smiled when he saw her, the loving husband act in full effect. "Hey baby. How was your day?" he asked. "Tiring. I went for a short walk trying to build my strength back up." Simone sat down next to him, glancing at his laptop screen. "What are you working on?" "Just some property listings." Blake closed the laptop quickly. Too quickly. "Blake," Simone said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "I've been trying to remember details about the night of the fire. The doctors say my memory might come back in pieces. I remembered something today and I wanted to ask you about it." She watched his body language shift, becoming tense. "What did you remember?" "I remember calling out to you. I'm pretty sure I heard your voice outside the bedroom door." Simone kept her expression innocent and confused. "But you said you weren't home. Did I dream that? Was that the smoke affecting my brain?" Blake's face went pale for just a second before he recovered. "Honey, you were in a traumatic situation. The doctor said you might have some mixed-up memories. I wasn't home that night. I was across town at a meeting. I wish I had been there. Maybe I could have saved you sooner." "You're probably right," Simone said, backing down. "It just felt so real." "Trauma can do that," Blake said, putting his arm around her. She forced herself not to flinch. "Try not to think about it too much. Focus on healing. That night, after Blake fell asleep, Simone checked his laptop. He hadn't logged out properly. She found his search history and her heart nearly stopped. He had been researching accidental deaths. Specifically, he had looked up information about carbon monoxide poisoning, about making it look like a gas leak accident, about whether life insurance paid out for household accidents. Blake was planning to try again. Simone took screenshots of everything and sent them to both Nadia and Detective Cole. Then she went to the bathroom and threw up, her body shaking with fear and rage. She couldn't stay in this house anymore. Not with Blake actively planning another attempt on her life. She texted Nadia, "I need somewhere safe to stay. Tonight." Within an hour, Nadia had arranged for Simone to stay at her apartment. But they had to be smart about it. If Blake knew she was onto him, he might run or destroy evidence. Simone came back to bed and pretended to sleep. The next morning, she told Blake she was going to stay with Nadia for a few days. "I just need some girl time," she said. "The house still smells like smoke and it's giving me headaches. Plus, Nadia has been wanting to help with my recovery. Is that okay?" Blake looked relieved. "Of course, whatever you need. Take all the time you want." He probably thought he was getting a break from having to pretend to care about her. What he didn't know was that Simone had just moved herself out of his immediate reach while she prepared the final stage of her plan. As she packed her bag, Blake's phone rang. He stepped into the other room to answer it, but Simone could hear parts of the conversation. "No, she's going to stay with a friend for a while." "I know, but we need to be patient. Trust me, I have a plan." He was talking to Amber. Still plotting. Still thinking he was going to get away with it. Simone finished packing and hugged Blake goodbye, letting him kiss her cheek. "I'll call you later," she said. "Love you," he replied automatically. "Sure you do," Simone thought as she walked out the door. At Nadia's apartment, she met again with Detective Cole. He had been busy. "I pulled the original fire investigation report," he said. The official ruling was accidental, but the investigator noted several irregularities that were dismissed. Multiple burn points. The jammed door lock. Accelerant residue that was attributed to cleaning products. Someone didn't want to dig deeper. "Can you reopen the case?" "I'm working on it, but I need your help. We need to catch Blake doing something that proves intent. The search history helps, but a good lawyer will say he was just curious or researching for a story. We need him to act." They came up with a plan. It was risky, but Simone was done playing it safe. She was going to force Blake's hand, make him reveal himself completely. And when he did, she would be ready to watch him fall. Simone had been staying at Nadia's apartment for 4 days when she put her plan into action. She called Blake that morning, her voice carefully neutral. "Hey, I think I'm ready to come home today," she said. "I miss our house." "Are you sure? I thought you needed more time." Blake sounded uncertain. "I do miss you," Simone lied smoothly. "And I've been thinking about the fire a lot. I want to go through some of our documents. The insurance company needs information about what was lost, and I figured I should start organizing everything." There was a pause on the other end. "I can handle all that for you. You don't need to worry about the paperwork. I want to do it. It'll help me feel productive." Simone kept her tone light. "Besides, I need to look at our financial records anyway. I was thinking about our bank accounts and I realized I don't even know what we have anymore. When I'm feeling better, I want to be more involved in our finances." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay. I'll see you tonight then." "Great. Love you." Simone hung up and looked at Detective Cole and Nadia, who had been listening on speaker. "He's worried," Nadia said. You could hear it in his voice. "Good," Simone replied. "Let him worry." The plan was simple but dangerous. Simone would return home and make it obvious she was looking into their finances and the fire investigation. She would ask innocent-sounding questions that would make Blake panic. The house was now equipped with hidden cameras and audio recording devices that Detective Cole had helped install while Blake was at work. Every room was covered. Every word would be captured. "You'll have backup nearby," Harrison assured her. "If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you signal us and we come in immediately." Simone nodded. She knew the risks, but she also knew this was the only way to get a confession that would stick. Blake needed to believe he was in danger of being caught. Only then would he reveal his true self. She went home that afternoon. Blake arrived an hour later with Chinese takeout and a strained smile. "Welcome back," he said, kissing her cheek. "I missed you." They ate dinner while making small talk. Simone could feel the tension radiating off him. After they finished, she casually mentioned she was going to look through the home office. "I want to get started on those insurance documents," she said. Now. It's kind of late. Blake stood up quickly. Why don't we watch a movie or something instead? I'm not tired. You go ahead. I'll just be an hour or so. Simone went to the office before Blake could protest further. She knew he was following her, hovering in the doorway as she started pulling out files and opening drawers. She made a show of looking confused at some of the bank statements. Blake, why does this account show such a large withdrawal last month? She asked, pointing to one of the statements. Business expense. I had to make a down payment on a property. But this is our joint savings account. I thought you used your business account for company purchases. I did, but I needed extra capital. Don't worry about it. Blake was getting agitated. Simone, can we do this another time? You're still recovering. You shouldn't stress yourself out with finances. I'm fine. Simone pulled out more files, deliberately making a mess. She found the fire investigation report and started reading it. This is interesting. The report says there were multiple points of origin for the fire. What does that mean? It means the fire spread to different areas. That's normal. But it says points of origin, not spread. Doesn't that mean it started in multiple places? Simone looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. How can a fire start in multiple places at once if it's accidental? Blake's jaw clenched. You're reading too much into technical jargon. The fire department ruled it accidental. That's all that matters. I suppose you're right. Simone put the report down and picked up another file. This one contained information about Blake's first wife, Patricia. Simone had planted it there earlier, wanting to see his reaction. Blake, I didn't know you kept files about Patricia. All the color drained from Blake's face. Where did you find that? It was in the bottom drawer. I was looking for our marriage certificate for the insurance company. Simone opened the folder, revealing the news clippings about Patricia's accident. It's so sad. She died so young. And in such a tragic accident. Put that away. Blake's voice was sharp now, all pretense of patience gone. I just think it's strange that you've had 2 wives involved in fatal accidents. I said put it away. Blake grabbed the folder from her hands and shoved it back in the drawer, slamming it shut. That's private. That's none of your business. I'm your wife. How is it not my business? Patricia's death was investigated and ruled an accident. I don't want to talk about it. Blake was breathing hard, his face red. And the fact that you're comparing it to your fire is insulting. I didn't cause either incident. I never said you did. Simone kept her voice calm even as her heart raced. The cameras were catching all of this. His aggressive behavior. His defensiveness. I'm sorry if I upset you. I was just curious. Blake took a deep breath, clearly trying to compose himself. I'm going to go make some calls for work. Please, just leave the office alone for tonight. He left the room and Simone heard him go upstairs. She waited a few minutes, then quietly followed. She could hear him on the phone in their bedroom, his voice low and urgent. Simone positioned herself outside the door where the hidden microphone would pick up his conversation clearly. We have a problem, Blake was saying. She's asking questions about the fire. About the bank accounts. She even found the stuff about Patricia. I don't know how much she knows, but she's getting suspicious. No, I can't wait anymore. It needs to happen soon. I was thinking carbon monoxide. It's winter, people use their heaters, accidents happen. Yes, I'm sure. We don't have a choice now. She's getting too close. Simone's hands shook as she listened. He was planning it. Right now. On a recorded line. Friday night, Blake continued. I'll make sure she's home alone. I'll say I have to work late. By the time anyone finds her, it'll look like a tragic accident. Just like we planned. Stop worrying. This time it'll work. This time she won't survive. Simone backed away from the door silently, her whole body trembling. She had the confession. Everything was on tape. But she was also in a house with a man who was actively planning to kill her in 2 days. She texted the code word to Detective Cole, Red. Her phone buzzed immediately with a response. Get out now. We're 2 minutes away. Simone grabbed her purse and car keys as quietly as she could. She was halfway to the front door when Blake appeared at the top of the stairs. Where are you going? He asked, his voice cold. I forgot I promised Nadia I'd help her with something tonight, Simone said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'll be back later. No. Blake started down the stairs slowly. I don't think you're going anywhere. Simone's blood turned to ice. He knew. Somehow he knew. Blake, what are you talking about? She tried to sound confused, innocent. You think I'm stupid? Blake reached the bottom of the stairs, blocking her path to the door. You've been snooping through my things, asking pointed questions. You obviously know something. I don't know anything. I'm just trying to understand our finances. Liar. Blake took a step toward her. You know about Amber. You probably know about the insurance too. I should have realized you weren't as brain damaged from the smoke as you pretended to be. Simone backed up toward the kitchen, trying to keep distance between them. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Blake's face was twisted with anger and something else, desperation. You've ruined everything. I had a perfect plan. I was going to be free, rich, and happy. But you had to survive. And now you're asking questions and stirring up trouble. Blake, please. I should have used more accelerant in the fire. Should have made sure you couldn't wake up. That was my mistake. He was advancing on her, backing her into the kitchen. But I won't make that mistake again. Simone's hand found the kitchen counter behind her. She grabbed the first thing she touched, a heavy cookbook, and held it up defensively. Don't come any closer, she warned. Blake laughed. What are you going to do? Hit me with a cookbook? You're not strong enough to hurt me, Simone. You've never been strong enough for anything. That's when the front door burst open. Detective Harrison Cole and 3 uniformed officers rushed in, guns drawn. Blake Bennett, don't move. Harrison shouted. Put your hands where I can see them. Blake's face went from rage to shock to calculation in seconds. Officers, thank God you're here. My wife has been acting strange since her accident. She's not well. She's been making accusations. Save it, Harrison said. We heard everything. The house is wired for audio and video. We have your entire confession on tape. The color drained from Blake's face as the reality hit him. You set me up. No, Simone said, stepping out from behind the counter. You set yourself up when you tried to murder me. Blake lunged toward her, but the officers grabbed him before he could reach her. They wrestled him to the ground, handcuffing him while he shouted curses and threats. Blake Bennett, you're under arrest for attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder, Harrison said, reading him his rights. As they dragged Blake out of the house, he looked back at Simone with pure hatred in his eyes. You'll regret this. You'll never prove anything. I already have, Simone replied calmly. When the police cars drove away with Blake in custody, Simone collapsed onto the couch, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. Nadia rushed in seconds later, having been waiting in a car down the street. Are you okay? Nadia wrapped her arms around Simone. I'm okay, Simone said, even though she wasn't sure it was true. It's over. It's finally over. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't completely over. There was still Amber Morrison to deal with. And there was still the matter of making sure Blake never hurt anyone again. The game wasn't over yet. This was just the end of the first round. Blake was denied bail. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, the recordings, the emails, the financial records, deemed him a flight risk and a danger to others. He was held in county jail awaiting trial. Simone felt a weight lift off her shoulders knowing he was locked up, but she knew the legal battle was far from over. Blake had hired an expensive defense attorney, some slick lawyer named Richard Vance who specialized in defending rich men accused of crimes. Vance was already spinning a narrative in the media about Blake being a devoted husband falsely accused by a traumatized wife with memory problems. Don't read that garbage, Nadia advised, taking Simone's phone away as she scrolled through news articles. That's what defense lawyers do. They plant reasonable doubt before the trial even starts. But Simone wasn't worried about Blake's lawyer. She had Detective Cole and the truth on her side. What concerned her more was Amber Morrison. Amber had gone quiet since Blake's arrest. She hadn't been at work, according to Blake's office. She wasn't posting on social media. She had essentially disappeared. She's scared, Harrison told Simone during one of their meetings. She knows we'll come for her next. Can you arrest her? Simone asked. We're building a case, but we need more evidence of her direct involvement. The emails show she knew about the insurance money and possibly the plan, but a good lawyer could argue she was just a mistress who made some inappropriate comments. We need proof that she actively participated in the conspiracy. Simone thought about this. Amber was a loose end, and loose ends had a way of unraveling entire cases. 2 days later, Amber's lawyer contacted the prosecutor's office. She wanted to make a deal. She was willing to testify against Blake in exchange for reduced charges. Simone sat in the prosecutor's office during the negotiation, which Nadia had insisted she had a right to witness as the victim. Amber looked terrible. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair wasn't styled. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. When she saw Simone, she started crying. "I'm so sorry," Amber said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Blake told me you were sick, that you were dying anyway, that the insurance money would just help him settle your medical debts faster. I didn't know he was planning to. I didn't know about the fire until after it happened." "Liar," Simone said calmly. Amber flinched. "I'm telling the truth. When I saw on the news that there had been a fire at your house, I confronted Blake. That's when he told me what he'd done. He said it was too late to back out, that we were in it together now." "You knew about the insurance policy," the prosecutor said, reading from the emails. "You knew about his financial problems. You encouraged him to handle the situation. Those are your words." "I thought he was going to divorce her," Amber sobbed. "I swear I thought handle the situation meant file for divorce. When I found out about the fire, I was horrified. But Blake said if I told anyone, he'd say it was all my idea. He said I was the one who pushed him to do it. I was afraid." Simone watched Amber's performance, trying to determine what was truth and what was manipulation. Had Amber really been an unknowing accomplice, or was she trying to save herself? "Blake has been controlling and abusive," Amber continued, looking at Simone. "He isolated me from my friends. He paid for everything, so I was dependent on him. When I tried to end things, he threatened me. He said he had pictures and messages that would ruin my reputation. I felt trapped." "This is very convenient," Nadia said sharply. "Now that Blake is arrested, suddenly you're a victim too?" "I know how it looks," Amber said. "But I'm telling you the truth. Blake Bennett is a dangerous man. He manipulated me just like he manipulated Simone. The only difference is I survived to talk about it." The prosecutor and Amber's lawyer negotiated for another hour. In the end, they reached an agreement. Amber would testify against Blake, providing details about their affair, his financial problems, and any conversations they had about the fire. In exchange, she would plead guilty to insurance fraud and conspiracy, receiving a reduced sentence of 10 years with possibility of parole after 5. Simone wanted to protest. 10 years didn't seem like enough for someone who was part of a murder plot. But Nadia explained that Amber's testimony would be crucial in ensuring Blake got a much longer sentence. "Sometimes you have to make deals with small fish to catch the big shark," Nadia said. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Amber approached Simone. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but Amber pushed past him. "I know you hate me," Amber said quietly. "I hate myself too. I was stupid and selfish and I believed Blake's lies. But I want you to know that I'm glad you survived. When I heard you were still alive, I was relieved. That sounds terrible, but it's true." Simone looked at this woman who had helped destroy her life. Part of her wanted to rage, to scream about betrayal and stolen necklaces and attempted murder. But another part of her just felt tired. "I don't forgive you," Simone said. "And I don't want your apology. But I hope prison teaches you to make better choices about the men you involve yourself with." Amber nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I hope you find happiness again. You deserve it." As Amber walked away with her lawyer, Nadia put an arm around Simone. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I'm just glad it's almost over." But there was still one more surprise waiting. That evening, Detective Cole called with news that would change everything. "We reopened the investigation into Patricia Bennett's death," he said. "Blake's first wife. We've been going through old evidence and we found something." "What?" "Patricia's car had a mechanical failure that night. The brake line was cut, made to look like natural wear and tear. But our forensics team was able to determine it was deliberate. And we found something else. Patricia had reached out to a divorce lawyer 2 weeks before she died. She was planning to leave Blake." Simone felt cold. "So he killed her too?" "We believe so. And with your testimony about what happened to you, we can establish a pattern. Blake Bennett doesn't just kill for money. He kills when women try to leave him or when they become inconvenient." "Can you charge him for Patricia's murder?" "We're working on it. The evidence is older and harder to prove, but combined with your case, it paints a clear picture. Blake Bennett is a serial killer. He just happens to kill for insurance money instead of other reasons." The trial was set for 3 months later. In the meantime, more of Blake's past came to light. Former girlfriends came forward with stories of controlling behavior and threats. Business partners revealed shady dealings and fraud. The man Simone had married seemed to peel away like layers of an onion, revealing something rotten at the core. Blake's lawyer tried everything. He argued Simone had set up the whole thing out of revenge for the affair. He claimed the recordings were doctored. He suggested Simone had started the fire herself for attention. But each argument fell apart under scrutiny. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Blake was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder, with additional consecutive sentences for arson, fraud, and conspiracy. With good behavior, he might get out when he was in his 60s. But more charges were pending for Patricia's murder, which could keep him locked up for life. When the verdict was read, Blake turned to look at Simone one last time. She met his eyes without flinching. She had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Simone with questions. She had prepared a statement with Nadia's help. "Blake Bennett tried to silence me by killing me," Simone said into the cameras. "He failed. And now his voice will be silenced behind bars for decades. I hope my story encourages other women to speak up when they're in danger. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And never let anyone make you feel like you're crazy for suspecting the truth." The next day, Simone put her house up for sale. She couldn't live there anymore, not with all those memories. She used the money from the sale plus the divorce settlement to start fresh. She wasn't done yet. She still had one more chapter to write in her story. And this one would be about rebuilding, not revenge. The weeks following Blake's conviction were strange for Simone. She had spent so much time and energy on bringing him to justice that she hadn't really thought about what would come after. Now, with Blake locked away and the legal battles mostly behind her, she had to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. She moved into a bright, modern apartment downtown, as far from her old house as possible. The apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much natural light it felt like living inside sunshine. There were no dark corners, no shadows. Everything was open and clean and new. Simone also started reconnecting with people from her past. During her marriage to Blake, she had let many friendships fade. He had been good at isolating her, making her feel like she didn't need anyone but him. Now she realized how much she had lost. One afternoon, she got a call from Mr. Jerome Patterson, one of Blake's former business partners. They had met briefly at a company party years ago, but she barely remembered him. "Mrs. Bennett, or should I say Miss Foster now?" Jerome had a kind voice. "I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I wanted to congratulate you on your victory against Blake." "Thank you. And you can call me Simone." "Simone, I also wanted to apologize. I should have warned you about Blake years ago when you married him. I had my suspicions that he wasn't a good man." This caught Simone's attention. "What do you mean?" Jerome sighed. "Blake and I were partners on a property development deal about 4 years ago. He defrauded me out of almost $500,000. He created fake documents, forged my signature, and sold the property without my knowledge. By the time I discovered what he'd done, he'd hidden the money so well I couldn't recover it." "Did you press charges?" "I tried, but Blake had covered his tracks too well. His lawyers made it sound like I was just bitter about a business deal gone wrong. I dropped the case because I couldn't afford to keep fighting him in court." Jerome paused. "When I heard what he did to you, I wasn't surprised. Blake Bennett is a snake. Always has been." "I appreciate you telling me this," Simone said. "During the trial, they mentioned he had business disputes, but I didn't know the details. There are others like me. Other people Blake has hurt over the years. If you're interested, I can connect you with them. Some of them wanted to testify at the trial but weren't allowed because their cases weren't directly related to yours." Simone thought about this. Blake was in prison, but there were still people suffering from his actions. People who deserved justice. "Yes," she said. "I'd like to meet them." Over the next few weeks, Jerome introduced her to a handful of Blake's victims. There was Teresa, a woman who had invested her retirement savings in one of Blake's development projects that turned out to be a scam. There was Marcus. No, wait, she couldn't use that name. There was Donald, a contractor Blake had refused to pay after completing a major renovation, forcing Donald's small business into bankruptcy. There was Rachel, a young woman Blake had mentored and then blamed when one of his illegal schemes was discovered. Each story was different, but they all had the same theme. Blake Bennett used people, took what he wanted, and discarded them without remorse. "What do we do about this?" Rachel asked during one of their meetings. "Blake is in prison, but we still haven't gotten any kind of compensation for what he did to us." "We file a civil suit," Simone said. "We go after whatever assets he has left. Split them among everyone he victimized." Nadia helped them organize a class action lawsuit against Blake's estate. It turned out Blake still had some valuable properties and assets that hadn't been seized. With the criminal conviction, it was much easier to prove fraud in civil court. During this process, Simone also learned more about Amber Morrison. Amber was serving her sentence in a women's correctional facility 3 hours away. Through the prison grapevine, Simone heard that Amber was struggling. She had no visitors. Her family had disowned her. She spent most of her time in the library reading and keeping to herself. Simone tried not to think about Amber. She had told herself she didn't care what happened to the other woman. But sometimes late at night, she wondered if Amber had really been as much a victim as she claimed. One person who surprised Simone was Detective Harrison Cole. After the trial ended, he continued to check in on her regularly. At first, she thought it was just professional follow-up, but then she realized he genuinely cared about how she was doing. "You seem different," Harrison observed during one of their coffee meetings. "Stronger." "I am stronger," Simone said. "Blake tried to break me. He tried to kill me. But I survived and I won. That changes a person." "Have you thought about what you want to do next? Career-wise, I mean." Simone had been thinking about this a lot. Before Blake, she had been an interior designer with her own small business. She had loved creating beautiful spaces for people. But after the fire, she couldn't look at a room without thinking about how quickly it could all burn down. "I want to help people," she said slowly. "Other survivors. People who've been through fires or other traumas. I want to help them rebuild their lives and their homes." Harrison nodded approvingly. "That's good. Turn your pain into purpose." Inspired by this conversation, Simone started researching fire safety and trauma recovery. She took courses on burn rehabilitation and PTSD. She volunteered at a shelter for domestic violence survivors, helping them create safe spaces in their new homes. She also started a blog, writing about her experience and what she had learned. She didn't use her real name at first, just calling herself Phoenix because she had risen from the ashes. But her story resonated with people. Within months, she had thousands of followers. Women who had survived abuse, people who had lost everything in fires or other disasters, anyone who had been betrayed by someone they trusted. One day she got a message that made her stop and think. It was from a woman named Claire. "Dear Phoenix," the message read, "I'm going through something similar to what you described. My husband has been acting strange and I think he might be planning to hurt me. I have no proof, just a feeling. Everyone thinks I'm being paranoid. Your story gave me the courage to start documenting things just in case. Thank you for sharing your truth. You might have saved my life." Simone read the message 3 times, tears in her eyes. This was it. This was her purpose. She had survived hell so she could help others escape it. She responded to Claire immediately, giving her practical advice. Document everything, tell someone you trust, make copies of important documents, have an exit plan. All the things Simone wished someone had told her earlier. As the months passed, Simone built a new life. She officially started a business called Rising Phoenix Design and Recovery, specializing in helping fire survivors and people escaping dangerous situations. She consulted on fire safety, helped people design secure homes, and provided emotional support through the recovery process. The civil lawsuit against Blake's estate was successful. After legal fees, Simone and the other victims split about $2 million. It wasn't enough to make up for what they had lost, but it was something. Simone used her share to expand her business and create a scholarship fund for women escaping abusive relationships. She also started speaking at events, telling her story to raise awareness about domestic violence and insurance fraud. At first, public speaking terrified her, but she got better with practice. And every time someone came up to her after a speech to say, "Thank you for sharing," or "You inspired me," she knew she was making a difference. One evening, about a year after Blake's conviction, Simone was closing up her office when someone knocked on the door. It was getting dark outside and she was alone in the building. For a moment, fear gripped her. Old habits from living with Blake. But when she looked through the window, she saw it was Harrison Cole holding 2 coffee cups. "Thought you might want some company," he said when she opened the door. "I know you work too late." Simone smiled and let him in. They sat in her office, drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. Harrison told her about his day, the cases he was working on. She told him about a new client she was helping, a family whose house had burned down due to faulty wiring. "You're doing good work," Harrison said. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." There was a pause and then Harrison said, "Simone, I know the timing might not be perfect, but I'd like to take you to dinner sometime. Not as a detective checking on a victim, but as a man who thinks you're remarkable and would like to get to know you better." Simone looked at him, really looked at him. Harrison was kind, honest, and had proven himself trustworthy when she needed help most. But was she ready for something romantic? I'd like that, she said carefully. But I need to take things slow. Really slow. Slow works for me, Harrison said with a gentle smile. I'm a patient man. As Simone locked up her office that night and walked to her car, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not just hope for justice or safety, but hope for happiness. Real, genuine happiness. Blake had tried to destroy her, but instead he had set her free. Free from his lies, free from her naivety, free to become the strongest version of herself. The battle wasn't completely over. Blake could still appeal and there were always new legal issues popping up. But Simone had won the war. She had survived, rebuilt, and found purpose in her pain. And that was the best revenge of all. Simone had successfully avoided thinking about Blake for months. She had built a new life, started her business, and was slowly opening her heart to the possibility of happiness again. Then she received a letter from the prison. Blake wanted to see her. Absolutely not, Nadia said immediately when Simone told her. There's no reason for you to subject yourself to that. I know, Simone agreed. But something about the request nagged at her. Blake was in prison. He couldn't hurt her anymore. Maybe seeing him one last time would give her closure. Or maybe she was being stupid. Harrison was equally opposed when she mentioned it to him over dinner a few nights later. They had been dating for 2 months now, taking things slow like she requested. He was gentle and patient, everything Blake hadn't been. He's trying to manipulate you, Harrison said. Guys like Blake, they can't stand losing control. He wants to see you to prove he still has power over you. But he doesn't have power over me anymore, Simone pointed out. Maybe I want him to see that. Maybe I want him to see me thriving while he rots in prison. Harrison studied her face. This isn't about closure for you, is it? This is about showing him that he lost. Simone smiled. Maybe. After a week of consideration, she agreed to the prison visit. Nadia insisted on coming with her, and Harrison arranged to be in the facility during the visit, just in case. The prison was a gray, depressing place. Everything was concrete and metal bars. The visitors' room smelled like disinfectant and despair. Simone sat at a table, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. When they brought Blake in, she almost didn't recognize him. Prison had not been kind to him. He had lost weight, his hair was going gray, and there was a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked older, meaner. He sat down across from her, his hands cuffed to the table. For a long moment they just stared at each other. You look good, Blake said finally. Prison must agree with you. I'm not in prison, Simone replied calmly. You are. Blake's jaw clenched. Did you come here to gloat? I came because you asked me to. Why did you want to see me, Blake? He leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Simone laughed. She couldn't help it. You're sorry? You tried to murder me and you're sorry? I was under a lot of pressure, Blake said, and she could see him slipping into his old patterns, making excuses, deflecting blame. The business was failing. I had debts. Amber was pressuring me. I wasn't thinking clearly. Stop, Simone held up a hand. I didn't come here to listen to your excuses. You tried to kill me because you're a selfish, greedy man who values money more than human life. You killed Patricia too, didn't you? Blake's face went blank. I was never convicted of that. Because they couldn't prove it. But we both know the truth. You killed your first wife for her insurance money, and when that ran out, you tried to kill me for mine. How long until you would have killed Amber if she had married you? You don't know anything about Patricia, Blake hissed. I know enough. I know she was planning to leave you, just like I was going to leave you eventually once I figured out what you really were. Simone leaned forward now, holding his gaze. Did you bring me here to apologize? Or did you bring me here because you can't stand that I won? Blake's calm facade cracked. You didn't win. You destroyed my life. No, Blake. You destroyed your own life when you decided murder was an acceptable solution to your problems. I just made sure you faced consequences for it. I gave you everything. Blake's voice rose, causing a guard to move closer. I gave you a home, a lifestyle, everything you wanted. And you betrayed me. You tried to burn me alive, Simone said quietly. I heard you outside that door, Blake. I heard your footsteps walking away while I was dying. That sound haunted me for months. But not anymore. Now when I think about that night, I remember that I survived. I beat you. Blake's eyes filled with rage and something else. Maybe desperation, maybe regret. I didn't think it would actually kill you. I thought you'd wake up and get out in time. Simone felt cold. You're lying. Even now, after everything, you're still lying. I'm not. The door was jammed from the outside. The fire started in multiple locations. You left the house while I was still trapped inside. Every single one of those actions shows intent to murder. So don't sit here and tell me you thought I'd survive." Blake's shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to go out of him. "What do you want me to say, Simone?" "I want you to admit what you did. Not just to me but to Patricia. To everyone you've hurt. I want you to take responsibility." "And if I do?" Blake looked up at her. "Will that make you feel better? Will that give you closure?" "No," Simone said honestly. "Nothing you say or do will undo what you did. But maybe if you admit the truth you can start to become a better person. Or at least a less terrible one." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Blake spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I did it. I killed Patricia. I cut her brake line and sent her off that cliff. And I tried to kill you too. I set that fire knowing you probably wouldn't make it out. And I would have killed Amber eventually if I had gotten away with it, because she knew too much." He looked up at Simone. "Is that what you wanted to hear?" Simone felt tears building but refused to let them fall. "Why?" "Because it was easier than divorce. Cheaper. Faster. And because..." Blake paused, searching for words. "Because I could. Because I convinced myself that what I wanted was more important than anyone else's life. Because I'm a bad person, Simone. I always have been. At least you finally told the truth about something." A guard approached. "Time's up." Blake stood, his chains clinking. "For what it's worth, I really did love you. In my own twisted way." "That wasn't love," Simone said, standing as well. "Love doesn't try to kill you." As the guards led Blake away, he looked back at her one last time. "I hope you find happiness, Simone. Real happiness." "I already have," she replied. She watched him disappear through the door, back to his cell, and felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had faced her monster and he was just a pathetic man in chains. Nothing to be afraid of anymore. Outside, Nadia was waiting. "How do you feel?" "Free," Simone said. "Finally free." Harrison joined them in the parking lot. "He confessed to killing Patricia," Simone told him. "While we were talking. I didn't even ask him to, he just admitted it." Harrison looked surprised. The room was being recorded. That confession can be used to reopen Patricia's case officially. "Good," Simone said. "Her family deserves justice too." As they drove away from the prison, Simone looked back at the gray building one last time. Blake would spend the rest of his life there probably. With his confession to Patricia's murder, he would likely face additional charges and more years added to his sentence. But Simone didn't care about that anymore. Blake wasn't her problem. He was just a chapter in her story, a dark one that was now closed. She had so much to look forward to. Her business was growing. She was helping people every day. She had friends who truly cared about her. And she had Harrison who treated her with respect and kindness. "You know what I realized in there?" Simone said to Nadia and Harrison. "Blake thought he was destroying me with that fire. But he actually set me free. I was trapped in a marriage with a monster, living a lie. The fire burned away all the pretense and showed me who he really was. In a weird way, he did me a favor." "That's one way to look at it," Nadia said with a slight smile. "It's the only way to look at it," Simone replied. "Because the alternative is to spend the rest of my life being a victim. And I refuse to do that." She had been through hell and come out the other side. She had faced death and won. She had exposed evil and seen justice done. She was a survivor, a fighter, and she was just getting started. Blake Bennett had tried to reduce her to ashes. Instead, she had risen from them, stronger and brighter than ever before. And that was the greatest victory of all. 6 months after the prison visit, Simone stood in front of a packed auditorium. She was giving a speech at a women's empowerment conference, something she never imagined herself doing before Blake tried to kill her. Before, she had been quiet, content to stay in the background. Now she had a voice and she intended to use it. "My name is Simone Foster," she began, her voice steady and clear. "And I am a survivor of attempted murder." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. She told her story, not every detail but enough. The fire. The betrayal. The investigation. The victory. She talked about how she had been naive and trusting, how she had missed signs that something was wrong. But she also talked about how she had found her strength, gathered evidence, and fought back. "Blake Bennett tried to silence me by killing me," Simone said, echoing her words from outside the courthouse a year ago. "He failed. And now his voice will be silenced behind bars for the rest of his life. I'm telling you this not for sympathy, but to show you that you have more power than you think. If you're in a dangerous situation, trust your instincts. Document everything. Reach out for help. And never let anyone convince you that you're crazy for suspecting the truth. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But my story isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving. After Blake was convicted, I had a choice. I could let his betrayal define me, let it make me bitter and afraid. Or I could use my experience to help others. I chose the latter. Simone talked about her business, Rising Phoenix Design and Recovery. She talked about the family she had helped, the lives she had touched. She talked about finding purpose in her pain. The fire that was meant to kill me actually set me free, she said. It burned away my illusions about my marriage and showed me who I really was underneath. I discovered that I'm stronger than I ever knew. I'm braver. I'm more resilient. And I'm not alone. She gestured to the audience. None of us are alone. Every person in this room has faced challenges. Some of you have survived things I can't even imagine. But you're here. You're still standing. And that makes you warriors. The applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation. Simone felt tears in her eyes, but they were good tears. Happy tears. After the speech, people lined up to talk to her. They shared their stories, thanked her for her courage, asked for advice. Simone stayed for hours talking to each person, offering what help she could. One woman, probably in her 50s, approached near the end. My daughter is in a situation similar to what you described, she said quietly. Her husband controls everything, her money, her phone, where she goes. She's afraid to leave. Can you help? Simone gave her a business card. Call me tomorrow. We'll figure out a safety plan together. As the conference ended and people filtered out, Harrison appeared at her side. He had been sitting in the back row, supporting her like he always did. That was amazing, he said, kissing her cheek. You were amazing. It felt good, Simone admitted. Scary but good. Come on, Harrison said, taking her hand. I have a surprise for you. He drove her to a building downtown that she didn't recognize. When they went inside, she gasped. It was a huge open space with perfect lighting and modern fixtures. A sign on the wall read Rising Phoenix Recovery Center, coming soon. What is this? Simone asked. It's yours, Harrison said. Well, it will be. I talked to Jerome Patterson and some of Blake's other victims. We all pooled our money together and bought this space for you. It can be a headquarters for your business, a counseling center for survivors, a resource hub, whatever you want it to be. Simone was speechless. She walked through the empty space, imagining what it could become. Offices where she could meet with clients. A workshop area where she could teach fire safety classes. Meeting rooms for support groups. Maybe even a small apartment for people who needed emergency housing. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. Say you'll accept it, Harrison replied. You've helped so many people, Simone. Let us help you. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. For everything. For believing in me, for supporting me, for being patient while I figured out how to trust again. Harrison pulled her into a hug. You never have to thank me for that. Being with you has been the easiest thing in the world. Over the next 3 months, Simone transformed the space into something beautiful. The Rising Phoenix Recovery Center opened with a big celebration. All her friends were there. Nadia, Jerome, the other people Blake had victimized, her new clients, and people she had met through her speaking engagements. Detective Cole, she still sometimes called him Harrison in her head, gave a speech about how proud he was of what she had built. Simone Foster could have let her trauma destroy her, he said. Instead, she used it to build something that will help countless people. That takes extraordinary strength and courage. The center offered multiple services. Simone's interior design work for fire survivors. Safety consultations for people in dangerous relationships. Support groups for trauma survivors. Financial planning for people rebuilding their lives. She hired a small staff of counselors and consultants, creating jobs while also expanding her reach. She also partnered with local law enforcement to create a database of signs of potential domestic violence and insurance fraud. If someone came to her with concerns, she had resources to help them document and report suspicious activity before it was too late. One morning, about a year and a half after Blake's conviction, Simone got a call from Detective Cole. You need to sit down for this, he said. Simone sat. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's right. Blake just pled guilty to Patricia's murder. His lawyer advised him to take a deal rather than risk trial. He's getting life in prison without parole. Simone closed her eyes, thinking of Patricia, a woman she had never met but whose fate had been so similar to her own. Her family must be relieved. They are. They want to meet you actually. To thank you. If you hadn't survived and fought back, we never would have reopened Patricia's case. I'd like that, Simone said. She met with Patricia's family the following week. They were kind people, still grieving their daughter even after all these years. Patricia's mother hugged Simone tightly. You gave us justice, she said. You gave us closure. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't save her, Simone said. I wish I had known about her when I married Blake. It's not your fault, Patricia's father said. Blake was very good at hiding who he really was. But you exposed him. You made sure he can never hurt anyone else. As Simone drove home from that meeting, she thought about the strange journey her life had taken. 2 years ago, she had been a naive woman married to a monster. She had almost died. But she had survived, fought back, and won. Now she was helping others do the same. She had a purpose. She had a community. She had love in her life again. That evening, Harrison came over with dinner. They ate on her balcony watching the sunset. I got offered a job, Harrison said casually. Simone looked at him. That's great. What kind of job? FBI. They want me to join a task force investigating domestic violence, murders, and insurance fraud. Apparently, our case got a lot of attention in law enforcement circles. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It would mean traveling a lot, being away for weeks at a time. He reached across the table and took her hand. I wouldn't want to leave you. Simone squeezed his hand. Harrison, if this is your dream job, you should take it. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here when you get back from your trips. Are you sure? I'm sure. Simone smiled. Besides, I have my own work to focus on. The center is expanding. I'm writing a book about my experience. I'm starting a podcast. I'm busy too. Harrison laughed. A book and a podcast? When did you decide all this? Last week. A publisher reached out after seeing my speech at the conference. They want me to write about recovery and resilience. And I thought a podcast would be a good way to share other people's stories too, not just my own. You're incredible, Harrison said. Do you know that? I'm learning to believe it, Simone replied honestly. That night, as she lay in bed, Simone thought about everything that had happened. The fire. The betrayal. The investigation. The trial. The rebuild. It had been the hardest period of her life, but also the most transformative. Blake had tried to break her, but instead he had forged her into something stronger. She was no longer the woman who blindly trusted and quietly accepted. She was someone who questioned, who fought, who refused to be a victim. Her scars, both physical and emotional, were part of her story now. She didn't hide them anymore. The burns on her arms had faded but were still visible. When people asked about them, she told the truth. She wasn't ashamed. The next morning, Simone went to her office at the center and started writing. The first chapter of her book began with the fire, with the most terrifying moment of her life. But it didn't end there. It ended with hope, with strength, with triumph. She wrote about the darkness so that others could find their way to the light. She wrote about betrayal so that others would know the warning signs. She wrote about justice so that others would know it was possible. And she wrote about rising from the ashes, because that's what she had done. That's what survivors do. They take the ruins of what was and build something new, something stronger, something beautiful. Blake Bennett had tried to reduce her to nothing but ashes and memories. Instead, he had given her a story worth telling, a purpose worth fighting for, and a life worth living. Simone Foster had died in that fire. But from those ashes had risen someone better, braver, and more powerful than she ever could have imagined. And she was just getting started.